Oh, hey there, folks. How you guys doing? What am I doing? Getting ready to render some burr comb. What else would I be doing on a beautiful, beautiful 54-degree day here in southeast Louisiana? It's December 18th. Beautiful, beautiful day here in southeast Louisiana, and killing some time and want to render some comb. So I'm going to show you what I got here. I want you to take a look at this. I always talk about at the beginning of the season, and all my videos since the first year I started doing YouTube was save your burr comb, folks. It's invaluable. Is that a right word? No, it's valuable. It's valuable. Very valuable. At least I found it to be. Even if it's only a couple of hives you're scraping burr comb from, save it over a couple of years then. But save your burr comb, and I'll show you why. Now, if I've said it once, I have said it 1,000 times, and you know what I'm going to say. This is not a how-to video. I'm not showing you how to render wax. I'm just showing you one way that I render wax, and I got it from folks that showed how to render wax. So, since I learned it as a how-to render wax from other people, I want to let you guys know this is how I do rendering wax. Why? Because there's enough how-to videos out there, and mine's not one of them. I'm just an average guy doing a blog in my V-yard, and we are in the winter months here. We have got beautiful weather on the horizon, and then we got some really cold weather. Thank you, Canada, for sending us this cold weather. Thank you, Canada. It's going to get in the teens, and everything down here is going to bust, freeze, break, everything else. Thank you, Canada. Thank you, Canada. Thank you, Canada. So yes, it's supposed to be in the teens, high of like 32 for a couple days, but then we're going to warm back up into the 40s and 50s. So it's going to be wonderful. We're going to actually get some real winter here. One bit of news for you. I finished up oxalic acid vaporization yesterday. It was a week after that first dose, or actually 5 days and 4 days and 5 days, or 5 days and 6 days, something like that. Anyway, it's done, and I did find a dead out. I don't know how I didn't notice it the first time around, or maybe it died between that first dose and that second dose, but it's a dead out. I looked at it, and after you're done vaporizing, all the bees pour out. Even on these, I did it and it was 50 degrees. All the bees poured out. That one didn't. So I opened it up, just cracked the top. And sure enough, small hive beetle larvae. So what I did was I stuffed every hole with plastic bags to kind of contain the disgusting mess that's getting ready to happen. And last night we had a good freeze and some good frost on the ground. We got into the upper 20s. So hopefully we at least froze some of them down. Plus I admit I took a torch, opened the top, and got rid of a bunch of them. Hopefully that's taking care of some of the eggs. If not, next week's weather should freeze them out. Hopefully it doesn't get slimed out too bad and pour on the bottom. Doesn't matter. Any frames that are disgustingly ruined will get thrown away, and I'll save the wooden frame and the plastic foundation. Everything else will get scraped off once it's washed with a hose. So I did find it dead out. Kind of disappointing. It was hive number 18. I was expecting hive number 19, not 18. But obviously 18 had dwindled more than I thought over the past couple months. So 19, on the other hand, I opened it up, and while it looked weak, it was alive. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, I'm going to show you a little bit about what I do for rendering burr comb. Why do I always tell you to save burr comb? Mind you now, I'm running anywhere from 35 to 50 hives at any given time. That's including nukes that I'm going to sell, splits, moves, swarms here and there, moving transient bees through the yard, whatever. So we'll just say an average of 40 is a good number. And not all production hives. Some of those are singles and nukes that are standing by to go through the season until the next season. Those are 5 frames that I may split off of a colony just to keep it from swarming, knowing they're not going to produce that year, but I'm going to raise them for the next year, things like that. So if you say an average of 40 colonies, and I'm scraping burr comb, and of course at the beginning of the year it's very, very heavy, then it slows back a little bit, and then as the flows hit, it gets heavy again. Those are the two main times, is early spring and going into summer is when I really scrape a lot of it. But anytime I scrape any of it, unless there's like one piece I may scrape and chunk it in the woods, most all the time I save every bit. I bring a bucket out with me, and let me show you why I do that. So this is last year's burr comb, and I never refined it on the second go around. I never made a second rendering. Actually, yeah, this might have been, yeah, that's right, this is last year's, all of last year's, because I remember I made 2 big cakes, and then this was left over from some small batches I did. I don't do these in my nice new clean bottler, okay? I do these in the pot that I'm going to show you. But this And this is last year's renderings. After I scrape them, I only scrape so much because pretty soon I start getting down into propolis mixed with wax, and you can see there's wax granules as you start scraping. Hey, that's wax wasted. Again, if I'm not throwing burr comb away, I'm not throwing anything away if I can help it. So I never did do a final on these. I just didn't get around to it. I don't know why I didn't, but I just didn't. So that's last year's burr comb, folks. That's burr comb from last year. That's why I say save it. This year, and look, there might have been a couple other old frames and pieces of solid comb that I saved and went into there too. So I'm gonna say, let's say about 2/3 of that is burr comb. But still, that's a lot. That's a lot of yellow wax that I can use to re-wax frames. And then this year's strictly burr comb, 100% burr comb, is this right here. I just got done. I did that yesterday. So what I'm gonna do, I did this yesterday. I scraped it down this morning. That's a lot of propolis and some debris mixed in with wax. I had about that much. It's about an inch of brown, slushy, sloppy debris on this I scraped off. But I don't scrape it, again, too deep because that's wax I'm scraping off. So I save it and do a final rendering on it. It didn't come out super clean, but that's because it was a nasty bucket. But I'm going to go ahead and render all this down, and I'll show you how I do it. And this is basically how I did the rendering yesterday. So what I did yesterday was I did all the sludgy, nasty part, and I didn't video it. I've got a video from last year doing it and from the year prior doing it, and so I'll try and remember to link it right up here in this corner. And what that'll do is it'll show you what I do with that initial first rendering. It's pretty nasty. It's sloppy, sludgy. When I say sludgy, it's all any of the wax moth stuff that was around, all the cocoons, all that stuff, and it's just a long process. I do it in this pot right here because that's my nasty pot. I've already got my nice clean new waxer cleaned up from all the cappings wax, and I'm really going to try and keep the cappings wax in there if I can. And I'll use this one, continue to use this one for burr comb, because any of you that have done this old burr comb know, and this old black comb and everything, it's the frames you may scrape, it's just nasty. So I keep it in that. To me, it's just easier to keep it separate. So that's what we're going to do, and I'll show you how I do it. And how I do it, it's no different than most anybody else will see on the internet. Now we boil. Before we get too far in this video, I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. This should be coming out after Christmas, but before Hive Life. So I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and I'm wishing everybody a Happy New Year. Now we have water boiling. Let's go take a look. This stuff came out of the freezer, so it's going to cool it down quick. In the freezer? What do you mean in the freezer, Mike? Well, I'll tell you what I mean. What I mean is, that's some brood comb. It wasn't refined the second time. It's still got a lot of honey mixed in it, and will have some honey mixed in it. It's still got a lot of brood smell, brood cocoon residue. It's got a lot of pollen left in it. So I have left out a block like that before and have come back a few months later in the summers we have down here, and I'm telling you, to be happy, the wax balls are just a big mess. So I freeze it all until I'm ready to do that last rendering on it. And once it gets anything close, matter of fact, it's already close to a boil, I'm going to turn it down because I don't want to burn my wax. I do have probably 4 inches of water in there, so that helps, but I don't want to take a chance of burning this wax, especially on this final rendering. Now's the part where we watch very carefully that we don't overrun the pot by letting it boil. It's still on a pretty high setting, but what I want to do is get the majority of it melted and just keep lowering the temperature a little at a time, because what I've learned is wax is extremely flammable. I can show you a spot. See the round circle? That's wax that was on fire inside of my barn. because I was trying to keep the bees off of it. That was a good lesson to learn without burning the place down. So I started to see water coming up through the wax, boiling, and it's got this low heat, but it's not all melted yet. Otherwise, it usually be coming in the center, and I want to see a steady boil of water coming up, not just these pockets going and then going away, then coming back and then going away. That's pretty steady. But look, I'm stirring it. There's why. Still got more wax to melt. So I gotta get all that melted down. That's that big last block I put in there. So a little more to go, and then it'll be time to turn it off and just let it settle for a few minutes while I go get a paint strainer and such for my buckets. Another thing you see is all this foam and all. That's that moisture and that honey coming up out of there as well. I mean, the wax, some of the wax is obviously foaming too, but a lot of times if there's a lot of honey left in it, I've found that whenever I'm doing it, I see a lot of, like if I'm doing an old cutout and I'm getting rid of a lot of old honeycomb, that foam will just sit there and boil off, and it's usually honey. When it's just more pure wax, you just see a light coat of foam on top. Although you let it get hot enough, it'll foam over quick. And boy, that stuff lights up fast. Now what I do, I got this thing to where it started rolling the water up, and I turned it way down. I actually want to start reducing it. I don't want to keep it at a boil too long. I just want to keep it warm. That's just about like that, because I don't want to superheat this stuff. And I've got one more piece that was down in here. It might be gone now. Yeah, I can still feel it down in there. There's one little piece left. I'm just going to let it do its thing. There it is. I feel it down there. Yeah, there it went. Floated by. Well, you can't see. It's too small to pick up. But basically, I just want to keep it warm now. It's hot enough to finish melting that. But I don't want to keep it boiling. I really try to bring it down and just keep it warm enough to finish melting slowly. And that's where I'm at now. And this also allows everything to kind of settle. And then I just pour it up. Do we really pour things up, though? It's more like a pour down. All right, there's no wax down there, so we're done. I might have too much for the bucket. It's going to be a huge block. Usually do 1 year at a time. This is 2 seasons. Now, another thing that I'll say about this process is I have not had an issue with this wax as far as going onto frames and the bees not touching it. They do just fine. I don't get it super clean. I'm going to run through a paint strainer. I normally use cheesecloth, but I'm going to run through a paint strainer and a strainer. And again, I don't normally have problems with this at all, so it can be a little dirty. I've never had an issue with the bees not drawing it out. They do just fine with it, and that's really all I use this old dark wax for. It's just hive maintenance. So it's such a valuable commodity to scrape that Burr comb. Even if you only have a couple hives, scrape it each year. And I know that's not much, but scrape it and save it for a couple years. You just never know. Any frames you're going to scrape and re-clean, save every bit of it. That's my advice. I mean, do what you need to do, but that's what I need to do. Because let me tell you, I've even tried to get some wax from Mr. Ed one time. Seems like a nice guy, right? Until you try to get wax from him. He ain't giving it up. Most beekeepers don't just give it up. And some will actually sell it for a reasonable price. But most, like me, I sell candles for my cappings wax, but that's it. I don't sell blocks of it normally. Anything over a pound. Wax is such a hot commodity, especially this old brood wax that I can reuse. Cutouts, the only reason I even do an annual cutout is to get the wax. That's my whole purpose. So I use this big old strainer. Got this at a restaurant supply store. Seems like the right size. I'll throw this down in here just to kind of grab some extra stuff. We'll pull that right out. I like that strainer because it fits in the bucket really well. Whoa. There's all the dirt and gunk starting to clog. Woo, lots of nastiness. take this right here, put this board on it. Actually, let me go this way. And let it dry, let it cure. And that's it, folks. That's all I'm gonna do. We'll go from there and see what we come up with in the next few days. I got so much stuff I've got to get done tomorrow. I may not do it tomorrow, but in the next couple days, we'll come out here, we'll break it out, scrape the bottom, and see what we come up with. Well, good morning, folks. It is now December 23rd, and I'm going to take care of this wax finally, if it's not frozen. So we made it to the 20s. This only happens every couple years, but this year it's going to be for the next few days. We're going to be in the teens tomorrow, 20s. What is that in Celsius? I just looked that up. So in Celsius it's -6. So now I know what y'all are talking about, Brad and Ian, whenever you talk about -6 Celsius. It's not unheard of down here. Snow's not unheard of. We had 8 inches one year, had 6 inches another year. It's not unheard of, but the wind is howling. It's actually up to 24 right now. It was 21. I think the low tomorrow is going to be 19. So anyway, going to be cold. Down here we really have to wrap our pipes and things like that. Watch what we have exposed because we're not even close to being built for this. But I've got a routine for when it gets cold, when it gets in the 20s, so no problem. The only issue I'm thinking now is the water under the wax frozen? Can I show you what I've got for burr comb now in my 2 seasons of saving burr comb? Usually I melted each season. Last year, for whatever reason, I didn't get to it. So anyway, I'm going to take a look at that really quick, and that way we can show you what we got for burr comb and why I think it's so important to save your burr comb. Man, it is cold. Wow, that wind is howling. I don't know what the wind chill is. They said it was going to be somewhere like between 0 and 5. But let me get out of the wind. Hopefully that didn't freeze too bad, and we'll see what we got. And I'll show you why I really do believe it's important to save your burr comb. Man, it's important. Okay, so it's still quite warm in my barn. That's good. It's cold, but it's warm enough. I don't think it froze. I see water coming up. The wax looks beautiful. Take a look at what I'm seeing. There it is. So we got some water. That's good. That means we should be able to get it out, no problem. But I don't know what kind of debris I have underneath. This shouldn't be a ton because it is the final rendering. And I'm gonna get a scraper and bring it with me. We're gonna take it in the back and do this because I've noticed this old water, when you pour it out here, it stinks for days and it kills a spot of grass. Let's go out. Woo, beautiful. That thing fell right out. It wasn't even stuck on the sides. So that was nice. But got a little debris layer on it pretty well. That's okay. This is used for maintenance on frames and such. And this right here is 8 inches solid of a cake of wax from 2 seasons of burr comb. Now don't get me wrong, I did scrape a few frames, and there were maybe a couple foundationless frames from old swarm traps that were in there. That I think there was 2 or 3 of those I added in of, you know, wax I took out of the frame, dark old comb. So there was a few of those, but I'm telling you, 85 to 90% of this is burr comb. That's why I say burr comb. There's my hand. It's definitely a nice piece of wax. Let me just take this old debris and go right down to the propolis. I won't redo this. It'll just have this on the bottom. I'll scrape it a little better with a nice metal scraper. But there you go. I found, for me, it's easier to scrape this when it's still wet. Even this I'm gonna keep on scraping this morning because what I don't want to do is deal with it when it's cold. When it dries, for me, I found it to be more of a pain. So I'm gonna get a sharp blade and get the rest of this off. But that's pretty nice. I'll rinse all that old trash off. That's pretty nice. And that's why I say my burr comb, folks. So this thing is every bit of 8 inches. What's left, I used an old automotive scraper used for gaskets and stuff. And what's left is that gray is basically propolis. You get through the brown silty stuff, that comes off easy. Then there's a hard layer of brownish grayish. Now, this is something I've learned over the years from way more seasoned beekeepers than myself, but they say this the gray is propolis. So when you get to that brown silty mixed with hard layer, that's getting into the propolis. I scrape it down to where I can start seeing through to the yellow, and this works fine for doing frames. I've never had a problem. I just stick the whole thing in, you know, I break a piece off and stick it in with that in there, and I would think that's even better. So nice, beautiful piece of comb wax that is 2 years worth of 2 seasons worth of Burr comb that I scrape and save, and a little bit extra. So there might have been about a 1/4 inch sheet in there from a cutout I had done. I just thought about that when I was up here, but that's it. So let's even say 75% Burr comb. I know it's Burr comb because that's all I put in there is in that freezer, is in those bags is Burr comb. I dump it out of the buckets when I go out there and inspect colonies. I usually only get Burr comb early in the spring, and then going into fall when I'm cleaning up colonies. But during this, and after the honey harvest, of course, those little inspections in between, there's not a lot left because you're in the hives more often than not. But so that just goes to show that the little bit of Burr comb you get, if you just save it, you don't know how much wax you'll get. Maybe you have to save it a few years to get it. I don't know. That's averaging 35, 40 colonies that I'm pulling Burr comb from. So that's a good take. I've said it from the day I started making these videos 3 years ago, was save your Burr comb. I'm not going to say who it was, but there's a fella that was doing videos, and he was just throwing all his Burr comb. Like, he'd scrape it and throw it. Like, yeah, don't worry about that. And he'd just throw it and just throw it. Nah. And he was just throwing it. I'm like, oh my goodness, stop throwing it. I'm watching money go out the window. So anyway, all right guys, well, that's gonna be it. I hope you enjoyed that little video of a tedious task I've started. January we'll really start getting into the work of getting ready for spring. I take about 2 to 3 months where I don't do a whole lot of anything in the bees or in the duties and things that got to be done. But January we start getting really busy. All the wax is done now. You may ask, why didn't you do that in your big melter? Well, I guess I could have done the final rendering in there, but I don't like doing the nasty stuff in my new one, because that's 2 years old now, and I've kept it pretty clean, and I like to keep it that way, so that I got good clean cappings wax going out into my sales stuff that I sell, candles and lip balm and those kinds of things. But anyway, that's going to do it. Christmas for me right now, it's a couple days away, but it should have already happened. It should have already passed by the time you see this video. So I hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. I sure do. I hope you guys have a happy and great New Year. I wish all of you the best and just many blessings to come in the year 2023. So, it's Barry's Best Honey. I'm Mike, and I do bees, but not today. We do wax. Y'all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the year, and have a happy, happy New Year. May God bless you, and we'll see y'all later.